Fortunato threw down a claim of his own, saying crime has risen under Lopinto's leadership. Paul Murphy takes a look at Jefferson Parish crime stats.
Look at the crime statistics.
Former JPSO Colonel John Fortunato says he's running for sheriff in Jefferson Parish to reverse what he sees as a troubling trend.
And I started to see a noticeable increase in crime, and that's violent crime.
According to crime statistics posted to the JPSO website, overall offenses are up year over year by 0.4%. But there have been 22 murders in JP between January and June. That's compared to 11 the same period last year. Rape and theft are also up compared to 2018.
It was those numbers that concerned me so greatly that's the reason I'm sitting in this chair today, to let the people of Jefferson Parish know that Jefferson Parish is not as safe as it once was.
Sheriff Lopinto disagrees.
The people of Jefferson Parish know who I am. If they want me to continue being sheriff, they'll vote for me.
Crime stats show robbery, assault, burglary, and auto theft have all decreased year over year. Lopinto told Eyewitness News to get a better picture of crime in the parish, you have to look at the total number of crimes over the past 20 years. By that standard, the number of offenses is down dramatically from nearly 24,000 crimes in 1999 to less than 11,000 last year.
For the last 2 years, I've proved who I am as sheriff. I work very hard. I go to work. Our crime stats are continuing to be down in Jefferson Parish. We're having some of the lowest crime rates. We're solving cases, at a record pace.
Lopinto narrowly defeated Fortunato in a special election 15 months ago.
There needs to be some immediate change.
Do I have confidence in my department to continue leading it for the future? Yes, I do.
We asked former NOPD Superintendent Ronald Surpass, now a criminal justice professor at Loyola, to interpret the numbers for us. He said recording 22 murders in JP through June is concerning when you consider there were only 24 killings last year in the parish. Surpass added the parish may experience a significant increase in murders by year end. Jade?